My name is Ben Ripple. I'm the co-founder of Big Tree Farms, based in Bali, Indonesia. We are a sustainable supply chain management company. We help traditional producers, or our mission is to aid traditional producers in the preservation of distinct cultural heritage by trying to help them attain true sustainability, or a balance between economy and ecology. What I'd like to do just right off the bat is jump into Indonesia, get us all, give you a taste of what I deal with every day, or have been dealing with every day for the past 10 years. I've been living in Bali. This is Shugi. This is Pak Sugio. We call him Shug. He's a sugar producer. And he lives in the Kokap Regency of Central Java. Except there's something very special about this sugar producer and about his clan of sugar producers, and that's that they're sitting on one of the most untapped potential resources of sustainable sugar in Indonesia, which is this massive forest of coconut palms in Central Java. This fellow here lives in Sumatra, which is the furthest west island in Indonesia. The Indonesian archipelago is the largest archipelago in the world, and it's made up of 17,000 islands. It runs just over 4,000 miles from Sumatra in the west to Irian Jaya in the east. So he lives actually in the southern part of the island, in an area called Lampung. And every morning he wakes up saronged and barefoot and makes his way through his mature food forest, what we would consider a jungle, and to him is his farm. And he wildcrafts out about a pound of fresh melinjo cherries, or melinjo fruits, from which he makes his daily keep. This fellow here is Pak Kapeng. He was one of the reasons why we started doing what we do. He's the head of the cooperative for the Kusamba salt makers clan in East Bali. Every morning, Pak Kapeng and the rest of the clan rise before the sun raises over the holy mountain Agung, which you can't see behind him, and turns that black sand beach into basically molten fire for the feet. And they start collecting seawater out of the blue, pristine bay from which they can make their brine for processing their salt each day. These artisan producers are some of the most incredible people that I've ever had the honor of meeting and working with. They form this intricate network of traditional production systems and cultural identities that make up the Indonesian archipelago, that make up the vast, innumerable cultural heritages that are Indonesia. Prior to a flag getting stuck in the ground in the 50s in Indonesia, it was just 17,000 islands of people speaking nearly as many languages. Now, whether we're talking about one of my favorite spices in the world, which is Piper retrofractum, the long pepper, which grows only wild and really predates Piper nigrum, or black pepper, in commerce. This was the original Roman pepper, the queen of peppers. But whether we're talking about this, or whether we're talking about Pat Shug sugar, or whether we're talking about traditional cocoa production systems, producers in the developing world right now, and not only Indonesia, but that's where I'm focused, producers in the developing world are being negatively impacted by market forces. And the way market forces are infiltrating traditional value chains and replacing those traditional value chains. This is Dadong. And Dadong lives with Kapeng and is one of the traditional salt producers in Kusamba, in the salt village in Bali. Now, Dadong insists that 20 years ago, when he was a child, that would make him about 30, but that's, they've got a problem with time in Bali. They call it jam karet, which means rubber time, so we'll give him the benefit of the doubt. But Pat Dadong says that 20 years ago as a child, he could go to the local markets and he could buy fresh fish for 1 coconut shell worth of sea salt, wet salt. That would only be a pound, maybe. Okay, today, in that same market, that same fish costs what it costs anybody who goes into that market, unless you're me, which would be market price. For me, it's market price plus boule, white man cost. So, but Pat Dadong, his sea salt's an extremely hard sell now. no matter how artisan it is and how unique it is, in Indonesia, the current price, the wholesale price of sea salt, being that Indonesia has become the third largest producer of sea salt, unsustainable sea salt, in the world, is about a penny a kilo. And it costs these guys right now about 30 cents after we audited their system, 30 cents a kilo to produce, to simply produce. So after 1,000 years of cultural heritage, cultural pride, and being known throughout the archipelago as the famous salt-producing clan that makes these incredible sea salts, the Indonesians refer to as taksu garam, uya taksu, which means the spirited sea salt. Now they're being told that they have to compete with companies, private enterprises, many of which have foreign investors that move their daily harvest with backhoes. So this is from Food and Wine, and this really is the start of the story here, an attempt to give producers the skills that they need in order to take advantage of that market force that's there instead of getting steamrolled by it. And these are the sea salts that Pat Dadong and his friend Kaping and the guys in Kusamba make, these incredible, unique crystal pyramids. So this brings me to this idea of sourcing sustainability. I think I mentioned it, no I didn't in the introduction, but sourcing sustainability. My hope today is that I can instill in you a desire to help turn the tables on this trend of disappearing traditional producer base throughout the developing worlds. I'm not going to sit up here and rant on the injustice of aggressive globalization and market forces and pitting them against traditional producers. There's been plenty of lip service against that already. But what I do want to do is explain who I am, who Big Tree Farms is, and how thanks to these producers, I very strongly believe that we've come upon a solution, a pretty simple solution to this issue of producer unsustainability. Our ethos is developing sustainable supply chains from farm to table, and relying on consumers as well in the market to make decisions with their purchasing power about these different products. So before I get further into that, I want to just quickly jump back to those producers and give you a little bit more of an in-depth look at the production systems themselves. So the one thing about these sugar producers is that all of their sugar is produced high up in the trees, like 75 feet high up in the trees in a swaying palm, as opposed to down on the nice stable land of a sugarcane palm plant or a sugar plantation. Every morning, they climb up the coconut palm trees with a machete strapped into their back of their shorts and little coconut vessels over their shoulders. They climb up into these trees and they take that machete, and at the top of all the palm fronds, there's actually a flower in every coconut palm tree. And they slice the tip off that flower, and it bleeds a sweet nectar. And so they hang a vessel in that. Actually, they do this, I'm sorry, in the evening, in the cool of the evening. They hang these vessels directly under this bleeding flower. And in the morning then, when they wake up again, they climb back up those trees and collect those vessels and bring them back down. And then that nectar that's collected, that's harvested overnight, is filtered to get rid of the little ants and the other protein-giving bugs. And then it's straight into the pot and evaporation over roaring coffee wood fires and on mud brick ovens and traditional kitchens. And they boil this nectar down into this buttery, smoky, fruity caramel sugar, which is truly unlike any other sweetener in the world. I mean, this is really an incredible artisan sugar, labor of love. Now these little things, the melinjo cherries, the melinjo fruits. These melinjo fruits are the basis, the basis for this incredible seed crisp called emping in Indonesia, which goes back well over 1,000 years in the archipelago. This is the sort of the original Lay's for Indonesia. And it's also probably the most labor-intensive snack product in the world. Each one of these fruits produces one seed, which produces one chip. One fruit, one seed, one chip. And these producers go out and actually have to wildcraft. They get about a pound a day from which they can make chips. Each one of these chips needs to be stripped, cured in a pile for 3 months, dry roasted in sand to make the nut meat reduce moisture content and get heated, and then cracked open and hand hammered into a little pancake before being sun-dried. And then, of course, before being eaten with wild abandon, as if we just opened a bag of Lay's and it didn't take us 3 days to make that chip. But therein lies the beauty of these chips, okay? This is a community that's been doing this for 1,000 years, and they do it for the simple beauty of the chip and for who they are, and Indonesia respects that. Unfortunately, now it's called kerupuk mahal, which means the expensive chip, you know? I mean, as we can imagine, it's a pretty expensive chip. But this is a traditional product that has real inherent value and is extremely sustainable. And then there's Ka Ping, who collects the seawater from the bay and carries it up and sprinkles that seawater in the black sand. These producers actually walk a line. They make a bed in these black sand beaches, and they walk a line between the beds and sprinkle seawater like a farmer throwing seeds onto a freshly prepared seed bed. And if it's a good day and the sun's high in the sky, that water that they sprinkle will evaporate up, and about 4 p.m. the black sand will be cool enough to come back and work on, and they'll actually rake up a very thin, crusty layer of black sand. If you can imagine in the morning walking in the dunes, there's a little soft crunch underfoot. That's what these producers are making. They're making that sort of salty sand layer. And the producers harvest that up with a rake and then use bamboo knives to collect it and bring it into their traditional salt works. And they use these hollowed out trunks of palm trees in which to put all of the sand that they've just harvested. And then they pour seawater over the top, allow that seawater to filter through. And the filtered water that comes through that sand that has the seed of the salt in it is a weak brine. Now, it's not strong enough to crystallize sea salts, so they got to go do the whole process again the next day. But this time, when they bring the sand in, instead of getting seawater and pouring over the top, they'll use that weak brine from before, and they'll pour that weak brine over the top, and this time the brine will be a little bit stronger. So after 3 days, they have a brine that's strong enough, but it's already the afternoon, so they got to wait to the 4th day in order to bring it outside and ladle it into these giant bamboo timbers that have been halved out, and they use as evaporation vessels. And depending on the season, you either get, there are a number of different crystals that these producers make. And it's because of the relative inefficiency of the production system that we end up with these incredible pyramid crystals that are really unlike any other crystal in the world. These things are prepared and produced and hand harvested on a scale of about 1 kilo a day. So, wow. That moves quickly. So, in the interest of time, I'm going to tell you, the super turbo version of how I came to Indonesia, because what I'd really like to do is get through that, and then get into more of the sustainable supply chain and what we're doing, what Big Tree Farms is doing. Because frankly, I'm not so important in all this. It's really this idea that we're creating that we hope Big Tree Farms is going to, spur others to pick up and run with. About 10 years ago, 10 years ago to maybe a month, 10 years, 1 month from now, I was sitting in a bar in Olympia, Washington, throwing down a few pints on a rainy night. It always rains in Olympia. And I just happened upon these tickets. Fate, gambling, whatever you call it. I won these tickets, and they were these little companion passes on United Air. Now, not being related to the guy in post 9/11, I don't think this would ever happen again, but I was able to go to the United desk, and I said, look what I've got. And he said, who are you? I said, who's that guy? And he said, Captain Davies. I said, I'm his son. And so they said, okay, where do you want to go? So a couple days later, I called my girlfriend down in San Francisco, and I said, let's get out of here. And then we were packed rucksacks, and out we went. And our grand plan was to travel around the world, learning traditional agricultural systems, and then into Europe and learn about winemaking and cheesemaking, and come back and start our penultimate grand organic farm. But that never happened. We actually got stuck in Indonesia. And the way we got stuck in Indonesia was also this other strange little twist of fate. we'd spent all of these months in eastern Indonesia, where I was really hoping we would find this incredible source of one of the great hearths of agriculture, one of the first origins of agriculture. And what we actually found there was quite disturbing. We found kids wading around in water systems, paddy systems, literally with a water cup, throwing DDT into the water. You know, they didn't know what they were doing. All they knew is it was cheap, it was on sale, and they said it would kill those, everythings. So, and then we also found in use everywhere in the Eastern Islands, paraquat, Agent Orange, fabulous herbicide. If you want to end up, well, never mind. I won't get into that. But it's nasty stuff. And unfortunately, these were smallholder farmers using quantities of these chemicals that were, probably more geared towards the Palouse Strip. And what the reality was that because it was such a microcosm, these tiny little islands, the degradation was just blatant and was incredible. And the health of the individuals and the health of their agricultural systems was really showing as in trouble. So we wanted to do something, and we kept traveling through. We weren't sure what we were going to do, but we landed in the island of Bali, which is a great place to land after being in Australasian islands to the east. It's verdant, it's lovely, and we were there 3 days up in the mountains in a place called Cinnamon. And 3 o'clock in the morning, the local English teacher, Pakari, comes barging into our room and says, come on, come on, come on. He rushed us out, put us on a motorbike, and up the hills we went to the top of this valley and looked down, and he said, my dead father just told me in a dream that you guys got to stay here, and so here, take our family land. So I don't know how you're going to say no to that one. So that was, I guess we were stuck in Indonesia at that point. So we built a little house here at the top of the valley and started our organic farm. And that was 10 years ago or 9 years ago. The organic farm started, and we actually met some incredible people along the way that helped us with our dream. John Hardy was one who maybe you've heard of. He's a pretty incredible visionary in Indonesia for sustainability. And things started growing, and the farm started growing, and it really just took off and was very successful in terms of training smallholder producers in a more sustainable model of agriculture. So that was sort of the impetus for us being in Indonesia, and what happened was we wanted to do more. So we took our models of creating sustainable supply chains in fresh produce, and we started to apply them to traditional producers in other walks of life, traditional food producers throughout the Indonesian archipelago. And today, Big Tree Farms is working with over 24 distinct producer groups in 12 islands throughout the 17,000 islands. Our basic idea, and sorry I had to jump a little bit ahead here, but our basic idea in creating these sustainable supply chains is to give the producers, the necessary tools, A, that they need, and B, the necessary percentage of the value chain, the total value chain between producer and end user, that they need in order to be sustainable, in order to be viable economically and ecologically. Because without that, then suddenly we're degrading our resource base at some point, even if it's not apparent in the very beginning. And so Big Tree Farms has developed this sort of recipe, if you will, for sustainable supply chains that we've now started plugging into local traditional honey producers, the palm sugar producers, cashew farmers, cacao farmers, spice producers throughout the archipelago. And the basic tenet for it is that we reevaluate the value chain. We find out what's happening currently. We audit their system. We tell them for the very first time, nobody's ever told them before, how much it costs them to produce products per hectare, per acre. They have no idea. All they know is somebody's going to buy it at the end of the day, so I must be making money. No. So we help them with that. We give them an audit. We explain to them their process. We explain to them their production system as it relates to a market economy. And that's an incredibly powerful moment, an empowering moment for them. And then we take it one step further and we say, okay, well, if you do X, Y, and Z, you'll be able to value add your raw commodity product, and you'll be able to access this much more of the value chain. And so at that point, then it's a process of mitigating relationships between these traditional producers and incredible visionary end users on this side of the pond, or in Japan, or in the EU, or in Australia. And through those relationships that we're building, and through the investment in producers, to give them a chance to value add their own their own commodity goods, and develop sustainability, I think that we have the means and a strong recipe to create, lasting, major, social, sustainable change. And I thank you guys very much for allowing me to come and talk to you about this today, because it's a dream to be in a room with so many like-minded individuals. So thank you all.